Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Last week you joined us as we made our way up to the Magadi Pans, where we explored the pans and just marveled in the beauty that Kubu Island has to offer. From there we made our way to Nata Lodge, where we spent a nice night before making our way up towards Kasane, while seeing some elephants along the way and spending some great time in the Chobe National Park. So sit back and join us this week as we travel further. This is our last day in Kasane and we decided to kick it off by taking a nice early morning game drive in the Chobe National Park. Again, we had some amazing sightings, including elephants and kudus and impalas, giraffes and hippos and waterbuck, just to name a few, and really enjoyable just spending time driving around in this amazing park. We continued driving the morning through the park, just being in awe of all the amazing animals that we were able to see. As it started to get closer to lunchtime, we made our way to one of the local hotels where we were greeted by two warthogs, where we sat down and enjoyed a nice lunch. After lunch, we just headed back to camp for a lazy afternoon. Later that afternoon, we went out on a sundowner cruise on the majestic Chobe River. Truly something I can recommend anyone to go do. You truly get a whole different perspective of the Chobe National Park and the Chobe River when you are on the river itself. It is really amazing, and it wasn't long before we started seeing the animals. We saw some amazing wildlife, including hippos, elephants, buffaloes, fish eagles, marabou stork, crocodiles. It was really incredible. We were even fortunate enough to see an elephant and a calf swim across the river right in front of our boat. It's really something incredible to see. And once they were on the island, they just stood around grazing and also probably enjoying the beautiful view. And soon after that incredible sighting, we saw 4 lions walking on the mainland next to the river. It was absolutely amazing what we saw the whole day. You truly do get a totally different perspective seeing the animals from the water. It was really amazing. Soon the sun was starting to set and we were making our way back to land, but not before enjoying one breathtaking sunset. We made the last bit of the journey back to land, and that night we decided to have dinner at the Chobe Marina Lodge. The next morning we got up at a nice leisurely pace and had a nice breakfast before we got back on the road. We made a fuel stop in Kasane where we greeted the 2 local warthogs before taking the road towards the Namibian border. Today we will be crossing over the Ngoma Bridge border post into the Caprivi to spend our first night in Namibia. We had about 240 kilometers to drive and our destination tonight would be the bush camp at Camp Kwando. Of course, there was also the matter of crossing the border, and we made a supply stop in Katima Mululu itself. It wasn't long before we reached the Namibian border and proceeded with the border crossing formalities. Soon after that, we were back on the road, making our way to Katima, where we visited the shops to get some essential foods. After a quick supply stop, we were back on the road and making our way to Camp Kwando. Pretty soon we were driving through the town of Kongola and we reached the turn-off point to the camp. From the turn-off you drive a few kilometers on a 2-spoor sandy gravel road that will lead you towards the camp terrain itself. There are signs along the way to ensure that you don't get lost. We proceeded to continue along the tracks until we reached the reception area where we checked in for our stay. From there it was a short drive to our campsite itself, where we could get nice and cozy and settled in for the next 2 days. The campsites are all next to a branch of the Kwando River, and they are all private campsites with private ablution facilities, and it is a very nice and private and secure experience. We got the camp set up and started to admire the beautiful sunset that was busy taking place. This campsite also frequently gets visited by elephants and hippos. Pretty soon the camp was set up and there was nothing more to do than just admire a breathtaking sunset. As it got darker, we got the fire started and settled in for tonight's braai. The next morning everyone got up at their own time and we had a nice day of relaxing at the campsite. We took a stroll down to the Sundowner deck where you can find the Mad Max bar and the swimming pool. Quite a great space to come and relax. It truly is very peaceful here and you can just come here and relax and unwind and forget about the city life for a while. Some of us made our way back to Kongola where we stocked up on some food supplies at the metro shop and filled the cars up with diesel. From there we made our way back to camp where we just had a nice relaxing lazy day at camp, enjoying what Africa has to offer. I had a few running repairs that I had to do, but that is of course part of the fun and part of the journey. And too soon the sun was starting to set again and we all started to move towards the fire area where we got the fire going, witnessed another breathtaking sunset and settled in for another night's braai. After a quick breakfast at camp, we were on the road again and making our way further into the Caprivi. We took the same track out that we came in on and wasn't long before we were back on the main road making our way to Ngepi. We had about 220 kilometers to cover today, all of which would be tar road except for the last 9 kilometers to Ngepi itself. Once again we got lucky and saw some elephants next to the road, and it wasn't long before we reached the Kavango River and made our way into Devundu. At Devundu itself we made a quick fuel stop, making sure that all the cars were filled with diesel. From there it was the last few kilometers on the tar road towards a turn-off to Ngepi camp. From here you've got about 9 kilometers of a dusty 2-spoor track. That's quite an easy drive to get to the camp itself. When driving this road, be sure to look out for some of the tongue-in-cheek signposts that's put up along the track. Some of them do give you a bit of a chuckle, especially if you're a Land Rover owner. We pushed on and it wasn't long before we reached the reception area where we checked in for the next 2 nights stay. At reception you will also find a little shop with a few souvenirs as well as the bar area and just a general hangout area. From there it was a short drive to our campsite itself. Once we've arrived at our campsite, we got the camp set up and settled in and started relaxing. Later that day we walked back towards the reception area and headed towards the restaurant where we grabbed something to eat while looking out over the river from the viewing deck. And later back at camp we were all relaxing, looking out over the river, waiting for the wildlife to come down and drink. And of course, as the sun set, we gathered around the fire and enjoyed a nice braai. The next morning I got up early and witnessed an incredible sunrise. We were up nice and early because we had booked a boat cruise to do some tiger fishing. We boarded the boat in the main lodge area and it wasn't long before we were on our way. Always a great, serene, peaceful experience spending time on the water. We were on the water for a good few hours this morning as we tried to catch some tiger fish. This time we weren't that lucky and we couldn't catch anything, but on previous visits I have managed to catch a few good fish. We were making our way back, and back at camp we were getting the food ready for a nice brunch. We were just planning on having a nice, lazy, relaxing day at the camp today. Brunch definitely didn't disappoint, and then the rest of the day we spent our time at Ngepi itself. One of the interesting things you can do is walk around and visit all the ablution facilities on the premises. They're all a bit tongue-in-cheek and quirky. Some of them are very beautiful. All a bit eccentric and weird, but it's a great thing to do if you are there. You can see that the campsite has a very chilled, laid-back, tongue-in-cheek vibe, even from the signposts up. And if you're brave enough, you can go down into the croc cage dive, as they call it, which is just a swimming pool in the river. Or just chill on one of the many decks where you can look over the river, enjoy a drink, and just have a nice, relaxing time. At night time near the bar area they light a big communal fire where you can sit around, but as always we had the fire going back at camp and we were ready for our next great braai. Join us next week as we spend our last few days in the Caprivi at Okokwitu River Lodge, where I do catch a nice tiger fish before pointing the car's nose south, going back to Cape Town, but first stopping over at Mount Echu, Marienthal, and then spending our last night at Grocery Camp just inside of South Africa again.